Good morning, everyone. I'm John,
I'm Jingming.
and this is JJ's Coffee Talk. So, yeah, today we're going to talk about one of my favorite subjects. It's this area of philosophy called phenomenology. Um, yeah, I like it because it relates to the philosophy of language, which is one of my key interests. Although we're not going to talk about that side of it today, we're mainly going to talk about how it relates to philosophy of mind, and especially for people for people who don't know much about philosophy of mind, we're going to compare this area with psychology and show you why it's different, and why it's important to keep them like separate in your mind. So yeah, this should give you, if you're new to phenomenology, like this should give you a good basic understanding of why it's like it was considered like a separate area of study and how it relates to psychology and other sciences.
Yeah, so I'm pretty new to this field. Actually,
Mm-hmm.
I never heard of phenomenology before I met John.
Mm-hmm.
So if you found it confusing or too hard, feel free to leave any comments below and we will try to answer them.
Yeah, yeah, we'll get to them when we have time. And yeah, also like and subscribe if you enjoy it.
Okay.
Okay, so yeah, so let's like start into what phenomenology basically is. So yeah, it started with this philosopher Edmund Husserl, like around the beginning of the 20th century. Actually, I think his logical investigations were in like the 1910s. We're mostly talking about his philosophy from that era.
Mm.
So like yeah, early in the century, and like the way he pictured it was as like a like basically a foundation of pure logic. And what he means by pure logic is that it's not mixed with any um, like empirical discoveries at all. Like it's all like in the same way that like mathematics is a pure science.
Mm-hmm.
Like he was trying to establish pure logic, like the ways our logical propositions are connected and understand the relation between propositions, but all in a way that was pure and prior to experience. And he thought we had to do that with this like rigorous method of phenomenology, which basically uh, looks at how things appear to us and only how they appear to us. So you kind of drop all presuppositions about like what is happening as you in conscious experience, as you engage in these acts of logical judgment, as you like as you form like expressions about the world, and just understand like how these how these experiences are composed.
So can I understand phenomenology as something intangible? Like nothing concrete at all? Nothing I
It
can touch in real life?
well, he actually thought of it as he thought of it as like the most concrete and the most like Husserl was really like an extreme realist. You could think of him like that. Like he was trying to
Oh.
get back to like the foundations of science. Like I mean, the things that can like probably kept him awake at night were like how do we like look at this like book on the table, and we both have like totally different. Or right now we're looking at a microphone. Let's
Mm-hmm.
use that. Um, so how do we look at this microphone? We both have like totally different experiences of it, but we can both like form propositions about it. I can tell you like, put the microphone away and you'll know approximately what I mean. Even though we have like totally different conscious experiences that don't share anything amongst each other, we have there's some sort of common understanding we have about what this object is and what its possibilities are.
So I guess those understandings are very um, unconscious. Can I say that? Like we're not really aware of them all the time.
Yeah, you could you could say that, but like Husserl would have been resistant to any idea of the unconscious, but
Mm.
it is sort of like almost like there is a lot of phenomenology that overlaps with psychoanalysis because it's sort of like delving like it's there's a lot of resistance to thinking about things in this very primitive light. Like there's a lot like you have to delve very deeply into your consciousness and like strip back all of these presuppositions about like what objects are, about how your world is made up. Like even all of your scientific understanding you have to let go of so that you can understand like the conscious intentions. We'll get into that word later. Like the conscious intentions that form this experience, that form your understanding of objects.
Okay. So what would be your understanding if you apply phenomenology to this microphone?
So, I mean, like Husserl would hope that, as we delve into these objects, like we'll we'll come to an understanding that's like pretty similar to just our common grammatical understanding, like the way I talk about it in our everyday language.
Yeah.
But he thought through this like rigorous method, we would get to like a pure grammar, like something that like all languages have in common, basically. So like our everyday experience is like mostly mediated through language that has certain like practical concerns just to communicate with each other. But Husserl thought there had to be some sort of like universality underlying it, like gave everyone this like common understanding of these objects. So he'd hope that like my understanding of the microphone under phenomenological analysis is like pretty. It's not going to be like I'm not going to understand like some like I've been in a dream this whole time and like there are like microphones actually like talk or something or like they're actually leprechauns. Like you're still going to have like a similar understanding to the microphone. He just thought it would be like scientifically rigorous. Like he thought they'd be completely clarified. And yeah, the important thing and what we're going to talk about today is that this is different than descriptive psychology. Like it's not just attending to these attending to like our feelings or like our the way that we perceive things. It's not just like intending to our conscious experience in that way, because he thought like empirical psychology was already laden with these it was already filled with these interpretations of what our conscious experience is and what are the objects that are presented to us. Like he thought you had to strip away all of those presuppositions, and like he actually thinks that phenomenology lies at the foundation of psychology, as it does for many other sciences.
I see.
Yeah. So yeah, that's why our first bullet point is against psychologism. So psychologism is basically the belief that like natural mental states will determine logical formulations. Like that something about how we use logic is like that there's some principles of like the human brain that determine logic. Husserl thought that was untenable. So in phenomenology, he thinks even though it is like analyzing actual experiences, he thought it was applied in such a way that you were looking at the pure basically like the pure ideas behind experiences, and not like you weren't attending to like the natural mental states, so your understanding of them. So he's like he does a lot of work to prove to people that his method of phenomenology is not a form of psychologism. Like he's not attending to our conscious experience because like the way our brain works holds the secrets to logic. Like to him it was like an like to him it was all within like the a priori, like the which means like prior to experience. So it was not mixed with any sort of empirical science.
I see.
So yeah, and his argument against like psychologism is that basically like it would be absurd that like pure logic could be somehow conditioned by this natural object, the brain, that like if our brain were wired differently we would somehow have different logic. That like so like there's something about thought that is like independent, that must be independent of the brain's composition. So and like I think the way you could understand this is that like if we discovered new things about our brain's functions, like we would argue about that. We debate about what it means for like how our psychological reality works. Like I think he would think think like neuroscience has some valid empirical discoveries,
Mm-hmm.
but no matter what we discover, like we would not revise logic. Like we would not change our understanding of logic based on what we find within the brain.
So the logic you're talking about, is it is it reasoning? Is it the cause and the result? That
Yeah,
relationship?
yeah, basically like grammatical reasoning, like any sort of grammatical relations. Like he's trying to discover with phenomenology like a pure grammar of experience.
I see.
Yeah, so like any sort of reasoning about objects and how they're interrelated.
Mm.
Yeah. So yeah, so he thinks like pure logic like can't rest on just some like just the way like humans happen to be naturally. Like it has to rest on some other foundation, and that's what phenomenology sets out to discover.
I see.
It's because I think like the way you could think about this is that if logic was like logic, we would say underlies psychological propositions. Like we make like our propositions about like how the brain works even
Mm-hmm.
are still guided by like our logical understanding of the brain. But if somehow like brain science like also altered logic,
Mm-hmm.
then there would be a kind of infinite regress. So there must be some scientific foundation, I think is what he's saying, underlying all of this. Like there must be some foundation for logic that is different than like our natural composition.
Oh, because our natural composition can be changed while logic cannot be changed?
Yeah, it's something like that. Like the form of like there are neural differences. Like we
Mm.
know that. Like I think even in Husserl's time they would have understood that well.
Mm-hmm.
So they're like the composition of the brain is contingent in some ways.
Mm.
And like Husserl's concerned with what's like essential to logical propositions, like things that don't change. And that basically underlies our like systems of like any objective framework of science.
I see. But I do read that if you have brain damage, then your personality could change.
Yeah, true, but
So isn't that is that altered logic? Like before, I won't get angry at something, but with the brain damage, I will get mad at something.
Husserl would say no because like he thinks even like to him even like it's to him it's like saying you could change like geometry.
Mm.
Like if we don't have like common logical propositions, then we couldn't even have like a framework of science. Like we couldn't have like theoretical physics. And this was like around the time of Einstein. He would have been familiar with that. Like part of yeah, like part of his philosophy is like responding to the sort of flux that Einstein put people in. But like if basically he thought if we didn't have like common logical propositions, if we didn't have some agreement about what our statements mean,
Mm-hmm.
then we couldn't have like a physics that has any real truth or meaning. Then we couldn't like we could have all these formulas, but Newton's formulas wouldn't make sense unless we saw that it applies to like this object moving in the world. Unless we understood what are the like what states of affairs that actually leads to.
Okay. Uh, so, okay. So even though the brain changes, that count as change in the psychological propositions.
uh yeah, I think basically he would think of any like personality changes as something contingent.
Okay.
So like your personality can be whatever, but it wouldn't change how you like do science. Like it wouldn't change like you could like your personality doesn't have any impact on how like good you are at chemistry or how well you can understand that.
Mm.
So they're like he's basically concerned with logical the logical forms that underlie that type of scientific activity.
So can I understand this way? So before a brain damage, the external factor is the stimulus, and the internal factor is my brain condition.
Mm-hmm.
And then, based on logic, this will result in not getting angry. And then, with the brain, after the brain damage, the external is the same, internal is different. So the logic still applies, but it yields a different result because the inner condition changed. So the logic is still the same. It's just it works on different materials.
Yeah, I think that's the way to understand it. So like even if you respond differently, that doesn't like you still have a common understanding of what happened.
Mm.
Like something might make you more angry afterwards, but
Yeah.
that doesn't change that you're still talking about the same event.
So it's like the law of the nature or logic is unchanged.
Yeah.
What's changed is my internal condition.
Yeah, exactly.
I
And
see.
Husserl's sort of in the tradition of idealism that he
Mhm.
thinks there is like you still have to understand like consciousness to get to this foundation of what makes like a universal science possible.
Mm. I see.
So that sort of gets to our next bullet point, which is about how phenomenology is ancillary to psychology. Like psychology as a science presupposes some phenomenological foundation.
Mm.
And in this way, psychology is like sort of in the same place as a lot of other sciences. Like Husserl's like, just trying really hard to prove that phenomenology is different than just descriptive psychology, in that it's like actually concerned with the a priori, what's prior to experience.
So it's not just describing the experience.
Exactly.
It's like dissecting.
Sort of, yeah. You could think of it like that. Like
Like-
it's getting to what's essential about it.
So it's like peeling an onion. I peel all the outer layers all the way to the core. Something like that?
Sort of like that, yeah.
Okay.
And he does believe that there is some sort of like idea at the center of it. Some like beneath this experience there's like I'm looking at the microphone right now, and like probably no one's had this exact experience before. But there's like some sort of like idea at the center of it. There's some universal like generic content. There's some generalizable content that I could talk about, and I could describe this proposition in a way that would make sense to someone like 2 weeks or like a year later.
So it's like your view on this microphone and my view on this microphone overlap at some parts, and that overlapping part is probably the objective reality.
Yeah, they have some sort of there's some sort of common essence that is that basically gives sense to our expressions. Like it's like what allows our expression about like when we talk about a microphone, like it refers to some sort of idea that's common to both of us, that some idea that's common that like it gives sense to that proposition that allows us to tie it back to like the experience of a microphone.
Okay, and this common part is what phenomenology cares about.
Exactly. Yeah.
I see. So in this case, without any presumption, this microphone is round on the top. Does that count as an objective fact, or?
Yeah, like you could talk about its shape, like that's like that also like there's like for him geometry also had its roots in phenomenology in that like in fact geometry is one of his key examples that there's some universal essence of a circle, and we see it everywhere, and no one's even though a circle's never been instantiated, like a pure circle's never been instantiated, we have an idea of what a circle is in its pure essence, and we see it throughout all experience. Like the circle at the top of this microphone is one instance. It has sort of a cylindrical shape.
Okay.
But that's one instance of a circle.
So, if I say this microphone collects sound, that would be something not at the core. That would be something with my presumption?
No, like that's you're sort of getting to the essence of a microphone. Is that like it involves like like our the concept of an essence, like like we use the term microphone and it has some sense and we know it does that. That's because the essence, like underlying all of these, like all of these propositions underlying these, or the words we use to describe this reality, like this essence has some, like they describe some like relational pattern, like they describe how things interrelate. So yeah, microphones are used for the purpose of collecting sound.
Yeah.
So that's like that would relate to the essence of a microphone. So yeah, like so yeah, Husserl almost sees phenomenology as something that would never really complete, but like it's like as a method, it's like it's extremely important to that we like it's extremely important that we adopt it as a method so that we can have like some sort of like rigorous analysis of what we mean by our expressions.
Okay.
And how like how all these even like conclusions of physics or like other sciences, how they ultimately tie back to experience was very important to work out.
I see.
And it would extend to even like the smallest propositions about things, or like any sort of grammatical construct we use. Like there could be some mistakes in them, but like there could be some that are adopted just for convenience, like the way we talk. But like there is like he believed that there was like some sort of ideal essence underlying, like there's some explanation for every way we talk basically, as long as it's actually like rigorous, like objective speech.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah, so and that's why it underlies psychology, because psychology to him like already like it occupies what he calls like the natural attitude. So it basically adopts all of these presuppositions we have that about how conscious life works, and that we have like these terms, like we know like the experience of anger, like there are these different psychological realities that we already carry presuppositions about. So phenomenology is presupposed in all of that because it's going back to the source of this empirical understanding of like how we like basically like how we even came to like understand like to have a term for something like anger or something like hope, like how like it is going back to the experiences that underlie these categorizations. And that was true, so it's the foundation for psychology, but it's also true of any other descriptive science, like whether it's physics or biology or like I don't know, medicine. I mean, yeah, probably even like literature, like yeah, like certain like like to him there were just certain like formal certain literary techniques we have some understanding of them. We can classify them scientifically because they correspond to an experience.
I see.
So like yeah, basically like any knowledge that can claim to be objective had to go back to this in his mind.
Because phenomenology is about logic.
Yeah, or it's the understanding of like essences.
I see.
A way he described it is sometimes was the science of essences. Yeah. So yeah, and logic, like essences, like the logic has to do with the essence of something, like how it like how how it relates to other things, and like what in what possible states of affairs we could imagine it, like what sensible propositions could we compose of it, like what would be logical to say about the microphone.
I see.
Yeah, so yeah, basically what it's doing is analyzing experiences in their pure generic essence. So by pure, he means it's not intermixed with any sort of empirical conclusions, any empirical discoveries.
But this sounds like common sense, though. Like reasoning, like reason and the result. what did this change? What did phenomenology change? How did it change our logic?
I can't say it did. Wait. So we'd have to get to Heidegger to talk about like this guy's legacy, like in psychology and philosophy as a whole. But well, like it did kind of change our understanding of the mind, which I think we'll get when I talk about like the key terms in his philosophy. I think we'll get to that. Um, but like, so like, but when I say like, anyways, to explain this term, the pure generic essence, pure is like, it's all not intermixed with any empirical discoveries. Generic means that it's like, and generic means that it's like generalizable. Like it's not tied to just a particular experience. And essence, essence is just like sort of the nature of the thing. So to so I guess what he changes is not the nature of logic. Like he thought we'd kind of discover, like he thought we'd kind of discover the same laws, but like we'd further clarify them or we'd make them more rigorous because he's going back to their source. That's the argument he'd make.
Okay.
Like he's going back to the source of all of our logical propositions by understanding these, like the not understanding just like how describing how experiences occur, but analyzing their pure generic essence, like what's universalizable about them.
Can you give me an example?
Like, the microphone is on the table.
Uh-huh.
Like it doesn't have to be about this particular table or this particular microphone. There are lots of different microphones and tables we associate with that, but we have some sort of idea of what that proposition is like, and we can include like certain experiences and exclude others. There's some sort of generalizable essence that we describe in that proposition.
What is the essence in this case?
Just whatever the proposition describes. The microphone is on the table.
Huh. So, what does this do? Like, knowing this, I know... I guess I don't know what difference does phenomenology make.
I mean... Yeah, that's a fair point. Like, I guess... Yeah, like I said, he didn't think it was... I mean, yeah, like people ask, like what good does it do? And a lot of like philosophers criticized him with like, you're just doing anthropology, like you're just like inquiring into human nature, like you're not really giving us any special insights into logic. But he thought this was like by understanding this, like basically this form of idealism, like how logic is fulfilled in conscious experience. Like he thought that was, without that we wouldn't have any understanding of what objectivity was. And yeah, I think that this next quote explains that it is a form of idealism. He's saying the aim is not to explain knowledge in the psychological or psychophysical sense as a factual occurrence in objective nature, but to shed light on the idea of knowledge and its constitutive elements and laws. So yeah, his goal is not, like, I think you could understand psychophysical sort of like neuroscience. Like if you had like a brain scan of someone like in the act of judgment, that wouldn't really contribute anything to phenomenology as he understands it. Like he's trying to understand the ideal laws that compose these logical relations that we can apply like universally across our experience.
So it's how knowledge is generated.
Yeah, exactly.
Not the generated knowledge.
Exactly, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's how it's that these what he calls ideational acts are constitutive of knowledge.
Are constitutive knowledge?
Constitutive, yeah. Like they create knowledge, as you say.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, that's usually the word that or translators use.
Mm.
Yeah, that there are these constitutive laws that underlie the idea of knowledge itself. It's not, yeah, it's not just like it's not just like an empirical science where like the way that descriptive psychology is sort of understood, where you just like analyze these experiences and then that tells you something about how the brain works.
Mm-hmm.
Like for him, it actually like goes back to their like ideal essence.
I see.
Yeah.
Their ideal essence. That's the like how you reason from A to B.
Yeah, ideal is sort of like, yeah, like the universal essence, more or less.
Okay.
It's like, yeah, like the idea is sort of like, yeah, it's sort of like what's not particular, like what's common across, like what idea is common, like universalizable across different experiences.
What ideas are universally what?
Are universalizable across experience.
I see. Okay. So not certain knowledge, but the rules apply, like the reasoning rules or guidelines applicable universally.
Yeah, I think that's right.
Okay. Cool. So the essence isn't some concrete knowledge, it is how knowledge is generated. Okay.
Yeah, it's not like it's not like a set of properties about its factual instantiation.
I see.
Like as a psychological reality.
Mm.
Like it's not like his goal isn't to understand like how our brains form judgments. Like there's like for him like yeah, this form of idealism, like the ideal laws. Like these sort of like these universal laws that are common across all logical judgments. Like that's what he had to understand. And that's what had to be the root of all objective science.
I see. Okay.
Yeah, so then the goal of phenomenology then is like not to like study objects, but to analyze how objects appear to us and only how they appear. So basically any presuppositions about what objects there are or what this like basically what this objective nature is like have to be bracketed. So the way you could put like generally describe this is just bracketing all like metaphysical presuppositions. And when he says metaphysical, he means like any like any description of like the fundamental nature of reality. Like even materialism, like which is how a lot of physicists understand reality today. Like that is a type of metaphysical presupposition.
But they do observe them under the microscope or any or some precise instrument.
But yeah, Husserl would say you don't have any claim to objectivity until that's related to like its fulfillment within consciousness. Like it's like fulfillment within experience. Like it has to be tied to these like has to be tied to this idealism.
Well, my experience is that I observe them under the instrument.
Yeah, so he would agree that you can draw conclusions from like microscopes and things like that, but like I think he would say that some physical theories like when they start to speculate about subatomic particles, like they can't speculate that there's about what their nature is outside of how it's given to us in experience. So yeah, it's sort of like an extreme realism. Like he's like trying to understand just like he forbids like any extrapolation basically beyond like what's given directly in intuition.
Like what? Like, can I give an example?
Like string theory.
Okay. how is that not consistent of phenomenology?
So it's like a theory of like fundamental, like what the like basically what the fundamental composition of the universe is.
Mm-hmm.
And like he would say like the only objective basis is like you could make up a lot of like explanations that fit onto our reality,
Mm-hmm.
but the only objective basis to him was this like ideal constitution of objective laws. Like it was only like to him it was only objective insofar as it was like tied to experience, like that it had an actual like intuitional fulfillment.
Okay.
So
I still don't understand why string theory doesn't
let's
align.
not talk about modern scientific theories at all. So
Okay.
because that will get too complicated. But yeah, as I said, we're like just gonna talk about philosophy of mind. But just
Alright,
like
if you're interested in phenomenology with science, please comment below. Let us know.
yeah, I'll try to find some sources that talk about that. But yeah, there's a lot of work in this area of philosophy afterwards that kind of changed the conversation. But anyways, yeah. So with Husserl, anyways, so like he basically thought like any understanding about that, like even that there were atoms composing this experience, or like that, I don't know, we think of it as like the refraction of light that is given to us in perception picked up by our eyeballs. Like he thought that had to be suspended, and that sort of gets us to our first key term, which is the epoche, which is like this bracketing or suspension of the natural attitude.
Is this German?
I think it's Greek.
Greek?
Yeah. So it's this suspension of the natural attitude where basically we analyze the ideating intuitions. We analyze just these mental acts that constitute ideas. So he thought you had to like suspend anything about any understanding about what this underlying nature of reality is, like whether those are atoms, and like whether those are atoms or whether it's, I don't know, like there's some like giant machine that's like dreaming, that we're put into this giant machine and it's like dreaming all of this or something.
Oh,
like
I think that's different than the concept of atoms, because atoms we can observe.
yeah, okay, so Husserl would think there are some valid conclusions to be drawn about like particles, or about like atomic particles, but to like understand the meaning of those theories, like you had to return to this form of idealism. Like you had to return to its fulfillment within experience.
Like you mean theories about atoms?
Yeah, in order for them to have objectivity.
Well, the experience is that we observe, they are observed, and there's some instrument.
Yeah, so then he would think it was valid to that degree.
I see.
But to fully clarify its meaning, he thought you needed phenomenology.
Okay.
Okay, so yeah, so an epoche is that bracketing of any presuppositions about what that underlying nature of reality is. So yeah, like that was like a materialist universe. Like he didn't think materialism was he didn't think materialism would work as like an ultimate theory. But he thought the same about like Hegel's version of idealism, that there is some ultimate reason beyond us all that we're all included in, or that like Hegel tries to kind of understand history, like understand all of reality from the top down. Like he thought that was also invalid, but like also materialism, understanding it as all from the bottom up, was also not like wouldn't ever reach completion. Like he thought you had to go back to this form of transcendental idealism to understand these mental acts and how they constitute these objective laws. But basically you suspend all presuppositions. We even suspend like the mere fact that we are an ego and have perceptions. So that's why it's very different than descriptive psychology, because you can't work with this understanding of like under your understanding of consciousness. You can't think of it as like an ego.
Then what is it?
It's just like it's almost like this raw, like this basic unit of experience. Like I think like he was like when you get down to it, I think he would think the simplest element is an intention, which is one of our next terms, which is intentionality. So he thinks like when we analyze our cognition like in itself, like we see that like intentionality like is sort of this formal principle that's present everywhere. So it's basically the principle that all consciousness is a consciousness of something. So like, yeah, if you look at it, don't think of it as like an ego with like eyeballs and all these organs that perceive things. Like look at it just how it occurs. All we know is that we have like that we have this, that there's this judgment, and that the judgment is always a judgment of something. And there are also other forms of intentions. Like in perception, something is perceived. In a statement, something is stated. In love, something loved. In hate, hated. Like there's also like some affectivity involved in it. There are different modes of it presenting. There are different modes of intention. And what's interesting to phenomenological analysis is this manner of reference. It's like the mode in which you intend something. Like a judgment is essentially different than like hoping something. Like judging that something is true is different than hoping that it be true, even though you could have the same proposition. That's the intention of both of them.
Judging something is true, like considering something is true.
Yeah.
Is different from hoping something is true.
Yeah, right. Like I could judge that there is coffee in the cup. I could also hope that there is coffee in the cup.
Yeah,
But
they're obviously different.
Yeah, so those are categorically different experiences, different intentions.
Is it because judgment is related to phenomenology, is related to a phenomena, and but hope is just what we hope for?
They're both related to phenomenology, he thinks.
How is hope related to it?
Well, he thinks the task of phenomenology is basically like this classification of different forms of intention is sort of the task that he sets out for phenomenology. And that's how he thinks like we'll have sort of a scientific categorization of conscious experience and how we'll understand like these different logical essences. Because like intention to him is sort of like the highest genus. Like that's the thing that's common across all conscious life, that there are these intentions, and you can actually have like intentions of intentions. It gets like a bit more complicated in how they interrelate, but basically he imagines that intentions are sort of like a highest genus, and that like hope and like judgment, love, they're different like species underlying this genus. And he thought they could be classified sort of like almost like the way that we classify animals, under like with a genus and then species underneath it.
So the intention here is like the intent, what we want to do.
No.
What is the intention here? What does the intention mean here?
Intention is just this unit, this fundamental unit of consciousness. It's just this way of that in consciousness there's like a relation between like perception and perceived. Like this unit is like an intention, and this is a different intention stating something. Intention is just, it's like a type of relation.
What relation?
And it's the intention. In love, something loved. Like this, that like it's just this, it's like this fundamental unit of consciousness that like every time I have a conscious some sort of conscious act, that I every time I judge something as true, like I judge that the microphone is on the table, that's an intention. Every time I love something, like I love the sky. I don't know. I love how the moon looks. Like that's another intention. Like those are like the fundamental components of consciousness, and like the different ways. But they're like species. There are species of it. Like there are differences within it, where there are different types of intention, and that's the interesting difference for the science of like the science of essences.
Huh. What are some different categories?
Well, that's what I just mentioned: judgment, hope.
Hope is different.
Yeah, hope is different. That's you asked what are the different categories. That's one of the different categories.
So hope is a category of intention?
Yeah, hope is a type of intention.
So because I can hope something, like something can be hoped?
Yeah, like hope is always hope of something.
So that fit into the definition here, consciousness of something?
Yeah, all consciousness is consciousness of something.
So as long as it fit into a format, like something of something, it is an intention?
Yeah.
Okay. So this is a different meaning. Intention here has a different meaning from how we usually use it in daily life.
Yeah, it's probably like not a perfect translation, but like it's like this way of intending things.
What does intend mean here?
Like intend, it's almost like indicate, like it has that sense, but it has this sense of like this, that's like a conscious activity.
So it's like be conscious of something.
Yeah.
Okay, so
if you're conscious of anything, like you have an intention underlying it.
Okay.
Like when I see the cup, I don't just see. Like I think what's interesting about this is like if I see the microphone, I don't just see like this shade of like black, like it's a black and red microphone. I don't just see these shades of red and shades of black, and then out of that experience I compose this this concept of a microphone. I just see a microphone.
Mm-hmm.
Like the fact that like the idea of something is so imminent is what was interesting about consciousness, and like that's what suggests the principle of intentionality, that like that every conscious experience is not primarily just like qualitative experience. It's like first the experience of essences, that it already has objects within it.
Okay.
And that's what he thinks is the principle of intentionality.
Oh, I see. Okay. And then this graph here is an example of different intentions.
Oh no, this is just to show what like a category, like a generic classification is.
I see.
Like where there's like a highest, like for him, like intention is sort of the highest category of consciousness.
Okay.
And then there are other subcategories within it. And like for him, phenomenological analysis was the task of like sort of figuring out this hierarchy, figuring out how like conscious intentions are classified. And from that, like from those specific differences amongst intentions, like we'd start to understand like what are the ideal laws that underlie logic.
From the different categories of intentions?
Yeah.
We realize the what?
Like what are the ideal, like the grammatical, like the pure grammatical laws that we employ within logic, within describing our experience.
Why do we need different categories of intention?
Because like I think he saw these like specific differences as what like sort of what makes up the science of consciousness.
I see. So it's different consciousness?
Yeah, like different forms of intentions.
Oh, I see. Okay. Cool.
Yeah. Okay. So that's all I wanted to say about Husserl today. Sorry that was quite a lot of things, but that's the basics. He's a very complicated philosopher. Um, yeah, and if you had energy, we wanted to have this free discussion about computers and intentionality. So this is something I just thought would be interesting to you because when people discuss like can computers think, like for at least at Notre Dame where like this branch of philosophy was pretty popular. Like a common rebuttal was like computers like categorically do not have like do not behave do not have like a computers like categorically are not guided by like intentionality. Like they do not have this they do not behave according to intentionality. So like
What is behaving according to intentionality?
Like it's this formal principle that consciousness is always consciousness of something.
Yeah, I mean, computer can be conscious about some object by using sensors. It knows something's there.
Well, yeah, like I said, the interesting thing about intentionality is that like you don't like objects aren't just made up of these like qualitative units. As soon as I experience the cup, like the idea of a cup is already present there. Like it's like imminently there. It's not. And with computers, like we just like sense like qualitative attributes, like we have like an array of pixels or something. And then we can like sort of draw like algorithmic conclusions from that.
Yeah.
But it doesn't really like it doesn't have the like the idea of the cup is not accessible to it directly. And that's
I mean, you also need to collect light reflected from the cup and then process it in your brain to realize that's a cup.
So that's the natural attitude talking.
That's true.
Well,
we learned it in biology class.
Yeah, I know, but biology needed to pay more attention to Husserl.
Yeah, but like that is still true. Like how your biology works to see there is a cup.
But then how come we don't? But then there isn't any like experience of like we don't experience the like qualitative attributes of the cup first.
Yeah, you don't realize it, but it doesn't mean your brain doesn't process it.
But exactly what we call intentionality is that way of experiencing the cup that's like imminently available.
But you don't know what your brain knows. Like for example, in the experiment, when people are shown a word related to food, like within a short period of time, so short that they don't even realize they saw the word. But then that word can lead them to select more words about food from a random pool. So your brain knows more than you know what it knows.
So you're saying that there is some sort of unconscious mechanism that constitutes this object.
Yeah. So like the like you may not be aware of what your brain knows or what your brain processes.
Well, but thinking of computers, like it's hard to argue that there is anything like a principle of intentionality, like that they are ultimately just pushing symbols around, like they're like there's no basis of like objectivity, and we still have like a lot of trouble like creating just like a object identification according to like an algorithm. Like we use these different like stochastic methods to do that, but like the fact that that's so difficult for computers, and that also like the understanding of language is like such a difficult task. Like I think like yeah, I think this argument is sort of getting in the right direction, that there's something like there's something different about consciousness.
But to see a cup, It is that you first collect the light and then your brain process the signals collected by your eyes. And it's similar to a computer, which or AI, which uses sensors to collect signals and then process it.
Well, yeah, I feel like this agreement is it's like very I mean this argument is very snappy, but it doesn't and I sort of agree with it, but it like doesn't get to the like it doesn't get to the core of like why Husserl is like has a like why he has a valid argument against like computers becoming conscious or something. But it like because you never would have thought of intentionality as just like an attribute of like biological things. It's like it's sort of like this fundamental condition of experience. But like yeah, like I remember sharing this to my dad who like also thinks like computers are gonna take over the world. He's sort of a philosophical Philistine. And
I'll make sure your dad listens this part.
but like yeah, so like I shared this with him once and then I said about like computers not having intentionality and he's like they'll just program that into it and they'll just design intentionality into the algorithms. And it's very hard to describe why that's not possible.
If intentionality is be aware of something, you can make the computer to be aware of a cup.
But it's not just being aware of something, it's like this principle of like how we engage in the world. Like almost that is given to linguistic expression is something unique to humans.
Then you also can just program the computer that it avoid the cup when moving forward. That's also doable. You just need to code a set of rules.
But like identifying the cup.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, if it's a relationship amongst quantitative attributes. It's not like they still don't operate with the idea of the cup, and they don't operate with grammatical concepts.
Oh, this dramatic.
Grammatical.
Grammatical. What does
like
that?
they don't operate with language basically. Like we reason through language. Computers do not do that. We just approximate linguistic output with them.
What do you mean by language? Reason by language.
Like through like an English language, but within some sort of grammatical structure where we have like an understanding of how objects are related.
So can you use language to reason about this cup?
Yeah, we do. I mean, like when we say the cup is on the table, we have some set of propositions. We have some like basically grammatical world that like some state of affairs for which that proposition would be non-contradictory, for which it would be coherent. So we know is that like the cup is on the table, like let's say the table is like this many dimensions wide. Like if we try to put a book that's a bad example. Like the cup is on the table, and then like I take the cup from the table, I like put it on the counter, and then if I say later I sit down and then I drink the cup from the table, like we're able to identify that that's a contradiction. So there's a certain state of affairs we compose grammatically.
I don't think computers would find it hard to do, to tell you that it's impossible.
But we have to like encode all those rules, and then they become invalid like outside of those contexts.
What do you mean invalid outside?
Like we have to encode all those you can give it like certain like certain logical like connections, but they're very limited to just like a certain set of like quantitative relations, or certain like just basically binary oppositions, like biconditionals, and they don't extend to like linguistic analysis. And I mean, it's very hard for them to like we're still working on the task of like reading a passage and like understanding like contradictions to the state of affairs described.
Well, a company recently pushed out an AI in their I/O, which can have very natural conversation with real humans.
The, okay, what I think this the reason I like this argument, although I think it doesn't fully describe like the reason phenomenology as a whole like convinces me, because like I don't think like the question that computers can become consciousness, it's not even like an interesting question to me anymore. It's I don't even consider it as a possibility, but like the but I think basically what it's saying with intentionality is that like there's some sort of necessity within our grammatical reasoning, and people are trying to get computers to understand language, but but they only do it like via approximations, and there's always some like accuracy involved. It's like stochastic methods, but it doesn't have actual like this like necessity that Husserl associates with intentionality, that there's like this necessary relation within these grammatical propositions. They only approximate it.
Necessary relation. What is the necessary relation?
Just that these logical propositions that like basically that we can remove the cup and see that it's like a contradiction if I like drink the cup from the same place.
Okay. I think the computer can do that too. It can, for example, like very easy example is the memory allocation in C++. If there is something occupying that part of memory, you get an error. If there's no memory, you get an error too.
See, that's exactly what I'm talking about. That's not like our grammatical rules.
It is.
That's just like a physical state of affairs. Yeah, they're non-compatible. But yeah, they're only like binary propositions. But
in the same way, the algorithms can check whether there is a certain thing, like whether the cup is on the table or not.
only if you encode it like quantitatively.
Yeah, like you basically assume that there is only one cup, and then you can keep a variable for where, like, which place has how many cups. And if one place has certain cup, the other place must have 0. And then if there's a 0 cup, and then you try to do something about it, it can detect that there's no cup for you to perform the operation.
Did you do that when you reasoned about the cup?
Well, we do that like very unconsciously. And if you dissect your reasoning, it is because the cup is moved somewhere else and there's no cup on this table.
See, that's what I call a psychological presupposition.
Not convinced.
Okay.
All right.
Agree to disagree.
Okay. All right. If you have any thoughts, our dearest audience, please leave a comment.
Yeah, comments or questions would be much appreciated.
Yeah, any advice too.
And yeah, please like or subscribe if you made it through the whole thing.
Yeah, if you want to hear more about this topic. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll have a heated discussion next time probably.
Yeah.
Or we can talk about Heidegger if he's even harder to explain. But yeah, I'm not sure we'll ever get to him.
Okay, well, let's listen to some feedback from our audience and see what we can talk about next time.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. Yeah, thanks for your attention.
Cool. Thank you.
Thank you, and see you next time.